Shalom again. I must say I'm really looking forward and enjoying doing these videos with you. Today we're going to go deep and we're going to go quick. So if you're ready, I'd like to share with you today a secret or a key to understanding the future. By that, I mean an insight that deals with the next era that I believe the body of Christ is going to go through. When my wife and I, before we got married, we took a child developmental class. And in that, the concept there is that there are certain developmental stages that we go through. A child can't skip crawling, and there's just these stages that we go through. And I believe the stage that we're going to go through next in the body of Christ, the key verse of understanding, it's like a dream. If you want to interpret a dream, the key emotion will give you more insight. I'd love to sit down with leaders, individuals who've gone the past 40 to 50 years of the church's maturation process and look back and see what are the key insights, the threads, the backbone for which everything else was built. I think it gives us great understanding for understanding how that concept works in the future. So from that conceptual perspective, the verse I want to say will help especially leaders understand where we're going internally is that John the Baptist said, "He must increase and I must decrease." I believe that will help us a lot in where we're going. Now let me unpack that. Inside the mental framework, we talked about Joseph and Joseph's life. And so Joseph starts out with this dream. He's got this strong frame of mind, this mental inertia and momentum as a young boy. He's got the coat. He's the best in town. He's got this special jacket with all the colors on it showing how superior he is. He has a dream. His father and his mother and his brothers will bow down to him. Then his life goes through all these complications and difficulties and so forth that clashed in here more than the circumstances he went through. And then he goes on to do that. He rules. He's over everybody else. David, in his early years, makes a statement in the book of Psalms, and he says, "God, examine me according to the righteousness that's in my heart." It's a bad prayer. You don't ever pray that prayer. If you're going to pray a prayer, it's, "God, overwhelm me and shadow down your great mercy and character over the inadequacies in my heart where my devotion is lacking." But he prays that prayer and he sets himself up for the grand secret viewing of the poolside movie with Bathsheba. And so that goes on, but David really does go on to be king, and he rules in that spot. But can you imagine the mental space of a guy who says, "Examine me"? He saw such a purity in his heart, and he winds up in adultery and murder. Now, the thing is, I'm not trying to make exemptions, but life can throw stuff at us. Life is difficult. And so we go on and we look at John. John, the apostle, is really amazing. They're walking along and they're preaching and they come across people who aren't doing what they're doing. And John says, "Do you want us to bring down fire from heaven?" Wait a minute. How did he get that mature that quick? What's that got to do with anything they're doing in that season? What was Jesus doing? Nobody was doing stuff like that. But see, it was in his head. He later wrote the book of Revelation. We are in the process of going to all the stuff that's inside of us. Remember, John's the one whose mother said, "Hey, Jesus, when you get to be in your kingdom, can my sons sit one on your right hand, one on your left hand?" Well, this good little Jewish boy was raised with that big type of thinking. Good Jewish mother, get their sons out there as far as they possibly can. He was doing what was in him, and he later on went on to write the book of Revelation. I look at Paul. You may not agree with this, but Paul makes a statement that to me, from a deliverance perspective, internal self-identification is light years. He says, "Hey, I know all those apostles over there. They're doing great stuff and they're doing fine, but I'm not one whit behind them. So if you look at me, don't think I'm any less than those guys. I think there's more going on than we see in the black print." Paul goes on to be a great apostle. Peter gets in a spot and Jesus is about to be denied and he says, "Wait a minute. I understand. I'm the guy who walked on water. This is Peter's mentality. I'm the guy who walked on water. I got out of the boat. I've done this stuff. I can see how these guys would deny you. I can get that. His inner man was speaking. I can get that. But me, I can't conceive of myself on that type of level." Oh, bad move. And so later on, Jesus comes to him on the seashore and says, "Peter, look, I get it. I understand how much drivenness, how big you are. But if you really love me, life is simple. Leadership is simple. Yeah, you can have dreams. I chose you. I like the dreamer, okay? But feed sheep, tend lambs. Give yourself to the internal development and character growth of people who are loving me. Be a shepherd. We see Elijah, the same thing. Elijah's like, where in the world did this guy come from? You know, he's like the birds are feeding him. The brook and the widows, he's raising people from the dead. He comes and tells fire down from heaven, burning off groups of 50. It's like, who is this guy? Comes to Mount Carmel, pulls fire down out of heaven, slays all false prophets. When it's done, he's like, I'm going to quit. I'm done with this. And God says, Elijah, I get it. I know who you are. You've got this ADD, you've got to have this heavy-duty stimulant. But if I leave you like that, then what's the rest of your life going to look like? Look, go back and establish a school of the prophets so that my kingdom can go on. And so God knows us, but what I want to see is in all these people, the change they went through in their head was big. Because to get to where we're going, we as often stumble sometimes as we have great successes. It's the process whereby he becomes larger and larger in us and we decrease. So as we come into this season of a full release of God, and I have to say this, not every person, there are exceptions. Not every person who's going to step up into leadership in our world, we have vivid examples of that now, are not going to portray the heart and the values of Christ. They will have not gone through the breaking process, because when you come to a fullness of eras, the fruit and the wheat grow together. This is a conflict that's going on within the body of Christ. Many of the spiritual leaders are in a place of coming to this maturity, whereas political leaders, it's not necessarily as clean. In fact, some things we have really significant problems we have to figure out. So, if you're in the process of going through and coming into this place where leaders are going to establish leadership in all the spheres of society, there's this great understanding is that he needs to increase. All that we do needs to exemplify the virtues and the purity of God. And that in the process, there's actually victory in decreasing because it gives him more space to do what he wants to do. Bless you. Pray all that you do will get to that place.